The bells of Cathedral echoed across the misty hills of Victorian England, as noble families gathered beneath towering stained-glass windows to witness a union neither bride nor groom had truly desired. Duke 34 stood tall in immaculate black evening attire trimmed with silver embroidery, his handsome features calm yet distant. Beside him waited Lady 24, dressed in an ivory silk gown with delicate lace sleeves inherited from her late mother. She lacked the dazzling beauty admired by London's fashionable society, but her gentle gray eyes held quiet warmth, and her composed smile concealed years of loneliness that no elegant dress could erase. Had lost both parents before reaching adulthood. Their modest estate had vanished beneath unpaid debts, leaving her dependent upon distant relatives who considered her more obligation than family. When the household proposed the marriage to preserve an old alliance between noble houses, she accepted with humble gratitude, hoping duty might eventually blossom into companionship. She expected little from the Duke except courtesy, believing kindness often grew slowly between strangers united by circumstance. The ceremony unfolded with flawless precision, yet whispers drifted among jeweled guests like cold drafts through ancient stone halls. Ladies compared unfavorably with celebrated beauties of the season, while quietly remarked that the Duke could have married almost anyone in England. Every murmur reached ears despite the music. She lowered her gaze rather than defend herself, refusing to allow bitterness to overshadow the vows she had sincerely spoken moments earlier. Noticed the whispers as well, yet he offered neither reassurance nor protest. Throughout the carriage ride to Manor, silence stretched between husband and wife. Beyond the windows, green fields rolled beneath a pale evening sky, but neither admired the peaceful landscape. Folded trembling hands upon her lap, wondering whether conversation might ease the distance already separating them. Each time she gathered courage to speak, the Duke stared elsewhere, his expression carved from polished stone. Manor rose beyond iron gates, magnificent beneath climbing ivy and fatting sunlight. Servants welcomed their new duchess with respectful bows, though curiosity lingered behind careful smiles. The elderly housekeeper, Mrs., offered a comforting glance that softened the loneliness tightening around her heart. It was the first genuine warmth she had received since dawn. As evening settled over the estate, tradition required the newlyweds to retire together. Paused outside the Duke's chamber, smoothing nervous fingers across her simple wedding ring. She carried no grand expectations, only hope that respectful conversation might mark the beginning of shared understanding. Drawing one steady breath, she quietly entered the candle-lit room, unaware that a single sentence would shatter every fragile dream she had carried into her marriage. Did not rise from the armchair beside the fireplace. He looked at only long enough to harden his expression. "Get out of my room, you aren't beautiful," he said, his voice calm enough to wound more deeply than anger ever could. The words stole the breath from her lungs. For one suspended moment, she wondered whether she had misunderstood. Then she saw the certainty in his eyes and knew there had been no mistake. Lowered her head without argument. She removed the delicate pearl earrings her mother had treasured, placed them beside her bouquet, and slipped her wedding ring from trembling fingers. After only a heartbeat, she quietly returned the ring to her hand. Whatever the Duke believed, she would honor the vows she had made. "I am sorry to disappoint you," she whispered, before leaving the room with silent dignity. Before dawn, she packed only a small satchel containing 2 dresses, a worn leather pouch, and several carefully folded letters. She accepted no money from the household and declined breakfast. Mrs. pleaded with her to wait, but merely thanked the older woman for her kindness and stepped into the cool morning. She traveled to the modest cottage where her elder brother now lived. Memories of happier childhood days lingered beneath its weathered roof, giving her enough courage to knock. Her brother welcomed her with startled concern, yet before he could invite her inside, his wife appeared. One glance at his travel-worn appearance was enough to harden her expression. She declared that a married woman belonged with her husband, not beneath another family's roof. She feared neighbors would gossip, damaging their own standing. His brother lowered his eyes, ashamed but unwilling to oppose his wife. Understanding his helplessness, offered a faint smile, thanked them both, and quietly walked away before tears could betray her composure. The summer sun climbed mercilessly overhead. Hour after hour she wandered dusty country roads without destination, refusing to burden anyone else. By afternoon, exhaustion clouded her vision, yet she still protected the faded leather pouch against her heart. Far behind, Manor had grown strangely unsettled. Servants realized their duchess had vanished without carriage, escort, or money. When Mrs. gently informed, unease stirred beneath his pride. The following morning, while riding across the countryside, he noticed a motionless figure beneath a withered oak tree. Dismounting in alarm, he recognized lying unconscious upon the scorched earth, one hand still clutching the worn leather pouch as though it contained her entire world. Dropped to one knee beside without caring that dust stained his polished riding clothes. Her face, already pale by nature, had turned almost colorless beneath the relentless summer sun. A trembling breath escaped her lips, yet her fingers remained firmly wrapped around the worn leather pouch resting against her chest. Even unconscious, she guarded it with unwavering determination. The sight unsettled him more than he wished to admit. This quiet woman, whom he had dismissed so cruelly, had protected something ordinary with greater devotion than she had protected her own fragile strength. He carefully lifted her into his arms. She weighed far less than he expected, as though years of quiet sacrifice had left little for herself. His carriage driver hurried forward but refused assistance, carrying his wife personally toward the waiting carriage. Throughout the journey back to Manor, he scarcely looked away from her face, silently hoping she would awaken before they arrived. She never stirred. The household erupted into anxious activity when the carriage rolled beneath the Manor's stone archway. Mrs. immediately summoned the physician while maids prepared the Duchess's chamber. Though servants expected the Duke to leave once she had been placed in bed, he remained nearby, watching as cool cloths were pressed against her forehead and chilled water touched her cracked lips. After a careful examination, the physician straightened with a grave expression. He explained that exhaustion, dehydration, and prolonged exposure to intense heat had nearly claimed her life. Another few hours beneath the blazing sky might have made recovery impossible. Absorbed every word in silence, guilt settling heavily upon him. No accusation from another person could have wounded him more deeply than the realization that his own pride had driven her into such suffering. When the physician departed, the room became still except for gentle breathing. Noticed the faded leather pouch resting beside the bed where a maid had placed it. Remembering how fiercely she had clung to it, he hesitated before reaching toward the worn clasp. Curiosity urged him forward, yet respect restrained him. Instead, he simply rested his hand upon the small pouch without opening it, wondering what memory could possess such value. Hours passed beneath gathering evening shadows. Mrs. quietly entered with fresh tea and paused upon seeing the Duke still seated beside the bedside. She offered no comment, merely replacing the candles before leaving again. Alone once more, studied the peaceful face of the woman he had rejected less than 2 days earlier. For the first time since their wedding, he realized he knew almost nothing about the heart hidden behind her gentle silence, and that ignorance suddenly troubled him deeply. Waited through the night, refusing the comfort of his own chamber. Dawn painted soft gold across the curtains when finally stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open, confused by the unfamiliar ceiling. The moment she recognized Manor, she tried to sit upright, but weakness forced her back against the pillows. "Your Grace," she whispered, lowering her eyes, "I am sorry to trouble anyone." "You nearly died," answered quietly. "There is nothing to apologize for." She looked surprised by the gentleness in his voice. After a silence, her first anxious question was, "Where is my pouch?" Lifted it carefully from the table and placed it into her waiting hands. Relief softened her features as she held it close again. "I never opened it," he said, "but I would like to understand why it matters so much if you are willing." traced the worn leather with her fingertips. Tears gathered quietly before she found her voice. Everything I truly treasure is inside. She loosened the ties and revealed several childish drawings, carefully folded letters, a tiny knitted scarf, and a list of names. These belong to the children at St. Refuge, she explained. After my parents died, I knew what loneliness felt like. Whenever I could, I visited the orphans with books, food, stories, and whatever money remained after household expenses. They made these for me. The little scarf was knitted by a girl named before illness claimed her. I carry them because I promised they would never be forgotten. Listened without interruption. Every assumption he had made about his wife collapsed beneath the quiet truth of her words. While fashionable society measured beauty through perfect faces and expensive gowns, had spent her inheritance comforting abandoned children who possessed nothing. She had hidden generosity because she expected no praise. Ashamed, lowered his head. I judged you before learning who you were, he admitted. Nothing can excuse that. Looked toward the window where morning light touched the garden. Kindness cannot be demanded, she replied softly. Neither can trust. Her answer held no anger, only honesty, and somehow that hurt more than accusation ever could. Accepted the silence between them without defending himself. He knew apologies alone would never mend what pride had broken. Outside, church bells echoed across the estate, announcing another ordinary morning. Yet inside the quiet chamber, something had begun to change. No longer saw merely the plain bride forced upon him. He saw a woman whose hidden compassion revealed a beauty deeper than anything admired in London's glittering ballrooms. As gently returned the treasured keepsakes to the pouch, silently vowed that, somehow, he would earn the forgiveness he no longer believed he deserved. Not through grand declarations, but through patient actions, unwavering respect, quiet companionship, and every gentle choice thereafter together.